guidance, maybe not inspired guidance, but I've said before, truth is truth wherever you hear it. Wherever it comes from, it's still true. So if you are doing something and a person says something to you that you look at it and you go, wow, that's useful information, but I'm not going to follow it because they said it. You need to not discount it because of that. The value of what you're being told should be evaluated based on its own merits, not just done because of or not done because of the person that spoke the words. I mean, sometimes the best financial advisors on earth give you bad advice. And so if you look at it and you go, that's not right. But since they're the expert, I'm going to do it anyway. Okay, your gut is usually right more often than you think, okay? But if you get advice or someone says something to you, evaluate it to the extent that you can based on what is said, not who said it. There's a commercial on TV right now, speaking of financial advisors, and these people, every time an issue comes up, they're going to go buy a car, and they just ask question after question after question about the car before they buy it. And something called, should we buy this avocado, or should we buy this lettuce? Should we do this? Should we do that? Should we do this? Should we do that? And their financial advisor says, I think we should move you into our new mutual fund. And they go, okay. No question, Question it, by the way. Because you don't just automatically do things because someone says you should. In fact, I know it's not true, but if you were to trust me and I said something, please don't do it just because I said it, because I could be wrong. Let's rephrase that. If one of the elders tells you that they think you should do something, they're probably right, but even elders can be wrong. If Johnny tells you to, go out and jump off a cliff, you go, that doesn't sound right to me. Maybe something's wrong with Johnny. I mean, he is your elder, and you're supposed to follow his guidance, but it's possible that he might have an aneurysm of some sort and go and get crazy, So judge what you hear based on its value intrinsically, rather than who necessarily told you that. Now, you'll take that into consideration probably to some extent, because you're much more likely to do stuff that people you trust tell you to do than people you distrust. But you just never know when somebody's going to give you good advice, and you're a thinking human being. You need to evaluate that information and act on it to the best of your ability. And that doesn't mean you'll always do it right. You'll make mistakes, and as I have on numerous occasions. But anyway, he speaks to Josiah. He tells him, God told me you shouldn't come up against me. He will destroy you. And it says in verse 22 in 2 Chronicles, Josiah, however, would not turn away from him, but disguised himself to engage him, the Pharaoh, in battle. He would not listen to what Necho had said at God's command. So see, it says God actually spoke through Necho. But I don't know if Necho knew that or not, for sure. So I'm having to do the throat lozenge just to keep from coughing continuously. I may still cough some. So he wouldn't do what Necho said at God's command, but went out to fight him on the plain of Megiddo. Archers shot King Josiah. Since he was disguised, they must have just accidentally hit him without knowing it was the king. And he told his officers, take me away, I'm badly wounded. So they took him out of his chariot, put him in his other chariot. My goodness, he has multiple chariots. And brought him to Jerusalem, where he died. He was buried in the tombs of his ancestors, and all Judah and Jerusalem mourned him. And it says, Jeremiah, this is not in 2 Kings, by the way, this detail. Jeremiah composed laments for Josiah, and to this day all the male and female singers commemorate Josiah in the laments. These became a tradition in Israel and are written in the laments. Now, So Megiddo was associated with war all the time.
Megiddo had a hill. We would call it sort of a ridge.
Okay.
And this is where Solomon had his horses stationed.
Okay.
And there's still remnants of that there.
Mm-hmm.
And from the hill of Megiddo, you can...
You keep talking. I'm going to turn
All
it
right, from the
back.
hill of Megiddo, you can see about 40 miles.
You've actually been there, I believe.
Yes.
Okay.
And so a messenger could stand there and look off into the distance and see the dust of an approaching army. And they would have about 7 to 10 days before the army could get there.
Okay.
And so they would have time to go back all the way to Jerusalem, warn them, get the troops together, and meet them there. And it's a very level place. It's the breadbasket of the eastern area up there. And it's a very fertile area because it's been filled with blood so many times.
That would fertilize it, I guess. Okay, don't either of you answer this question yet. Where else has Megiddo come up in the New Testament? Wait. Okay, go. You don't? Revelation. Armageddon. Armageddo. It's a symbolic reference. The hill Armageddon, or Armageddon, means the hill of Megiddo, which he just spoke of. And it is a symbolic reference to what? What is Megiddo known for? Place of war. It's not the end of time. It's just a great battle. It's a symbol for a great battle on a battlefield. If someone said Hill of Megiddo, people immediately thought of war for thousands of years. So, another of those fantastic concepts bites the dust. Did you turn it off? Yeah, I guess you did. Or somebody did. Okay. So he goes out, he dies, and it says that Jeremiah wrote lamentations for him and that they are contained in the laments. And if you go out and look in Lamentations, which is 6 chapters long, it's pretty short, there is nothing there that is clearly related to Josiah that I could find that's clearly associated with him. So either it's disguised in some way, or it has gotten away somehow, either because there were other laments or whatever. But it did find one verse that could be attributed to Josiah. It's Lamentations 4:20. And it's just this one verse. It says, "The Lord's anointed, our very breath, was caught in their traps. We thought that under his shadow we would live among the nations." In other words, we would continue. It's possible that might refer to Josiah. Lord's anointed means just the one who is anointed. And you anointed all kings, of course. That word, probably, I didn't look it up, Bill, but I'm assuming that word is the same word as Messiah, if I'm not mistaken. That's what Messiah means, is the anointed one. So it could have read, "The Lord's Messiah, our very breath, was caught in their traps. We thought that under his shadow we would live among the nations." Now, it would be pretty weird to claim that was a prophecy of Christ, because that is a negative result rather than a positive result. But the term anointed just meant whoever had been appointed officially to carry out a function. That could refer to Josiah. Everything around it is extremely bad, negative, and being carried off and destroyed and everything. And that was just kind of stuck in the middle there. So whether or not we have the laments for Josiah is questionable, I guess. Hopefully we haven't lost anything of great value there, but it said that they kept singing that song over a period of time. So maybe it was just a short song, who knows. So anyway, Josiah dies, and I'm going to jump back into 2 Kings again. Keep forgetting what chapter I'm in. Chapter 23, verse 31. And in verse 31, his son Jehoahaz, 23 years old, is king. And he only reigns for 3 months, which is probably a good thing. Mentions his mother, Hamutal, daughter of Jeremiah. I don't know if that's the Jeremiah prophet or another Jeremiah. She was from Libnah. He did evil in the eyes of Jehovah, just as his predecessors, except for his father and great-great-grandfather or so. Let's see. Wait a minute. Well, I can't find Hezekiah. Oh, Hezekiah is down there. Okay, his father, grandfather, his great-great-grandfather and Josiah were good. But the other guys were not, and so he did what they had done and did evil in the eyes of Jehovah. The same Pharaoh comes and takes over, puts him in chains, so that he might not reign in Jerusalem. That's why he only reigned 3 months. And he imposed, that is the Pharaoh, imposed on Judah a levy of 100 talents of silver. That's a pretty good pile of silver. And a talent of gold. Pharaoh makes Eliakim, another son of Josiah, this guy's brother, king in, wait a minute, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. He replaces the guy with Eliakim, another one of Josiah's sons, and changes Eliakim's name to Jehoiakim. I don't know why that is. And he takes Jehoahaz and carries him off to Egypt, and there he dies there. It doesn't say anything else more about him. Jehoiakim pays Pharaoh the silver and gold that he had demanded, as we just mentioned. In order to do so, he taxed the land and exacted the silver and gold from the people of the land according to their assessments. So they had tax assessments even in those days. So it starts back over again a little bit here. Jehoiakim was 25 years old, so he was approximately the same age as his brother. His brother was 23, yeah, so they were close in age. But if you notice, they had different mothers. One had Hamutal, and the other one had Zebidah, or Zebedah, or something like that, as his mother. In case you're wondering, the kings of Israel and Judah had many wives. Solomon is a prime example of having tons and tons of wives and concubines. And so they typically would have many, many, many children by these various women. And so Jehoiakim, again, he did evil in the eyes of Jehovah. During his reign, verse 24, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, remember they had been getting invaded by the Assyrian Empire. In fact, the Assyrians took Israel, the northern kingdom, completely away. And now the Babylonian Empire, up in Iraq, is invading Judah. And Jehoiakim became the vassal of Nebuchadnezzar for 3 years. Then he turned against Nebuchadnezzar and rebelled. Jehovah sent Babylonian, Aramean, Moabite, and Ammonite raiders against him to destroy Judah in accordance with his word, with the word of the Lord proclaimed by his servants the prophets. Surely these things happened to Judah according to Jehovah's command, in order to remove them from his presence because of the sins of Manasseh and all he had done. Remember, we talked about him, including the shedding of innocent blood, which we've also talked about. For he had filled Jerusalem with innocent blood, and Jehovah was not willing to forgive. As for the other events of Jehoiakim's reign and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? Jehoiakim rested with his ancestors, and Jehoiachin, which is very similar to Jehoiakim, Jehoiachin, his son, succeeded him as king. The king of Egypt did not march out from his own country again, because the king of Babylon had taken all of his territory from the Wadi of Egypt to the Euphrates River. So if you kind of get in your head a picture of the land of Israel, and Assyria's up here, Iraq and Babylon are over here, Egypt is down here. Egypt had held most of the land all the way up to Iraq, and the Babylonian Empire had absorbed all that land down, and so the king of Egypt was not able to really do much of anything. He was pretty much contained at that point, which was probably to the advantage of the Hebrews at that point, since they were not being attacked so much on all sides. So Jehoiachin, it says in verse 8, was 18 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem for 3 months. Wow, that's a short one too. His mother's name was Nehushta, daughter of some other person. She was from Jerusalem. He did evil in the eyes of Jehovah, just as his father had done. Now, we have run up on a word already that sounds almost exactly like his mother's name. Anybody remember it? What did they call the snake on a pole? Nehushtan. And this woman's name is Nehushta, which is probably, I'm guessing, the feminine form of the same thing. So, ladies, how would you like it if your name were Snake? I mean, we kind of, that's kind of a cool name for a guy. Hey, Snake, come over here, you know. There's a movie about a guy named Snake. But, you know, that's not a very nice name for a woman. It also means bronze, I think, at the same time, or it sounds a lot like the word bronze, so maybe that's not such a good name. You know, she's bronzy, she's shiny, she's pretty and stuff. But anyway, it sounds very much like the name they had given to the snake on the pole, so I'm not sure what the implications of that were. So, verse 10, after that time, some of the officers of Nebuchadnezzar from Babylon advanced on Jerusalem, laid siege to it. It says even Nebuchadnezzar himself came to the city while his officers were besieging it. Jehoiachin, king of Judah, his mother, his attendants, his nobles, and his officials all surrendered to Nebuchadnezzar. Probably smart. In the 8th year of the reign of the king of Babylon, he took Jehoiachin prisoner. As Jehovah had declared, Nebuchadnezzar removed the treasures from the temple of Jehovah and from the royal palace and cut up the gold articles that Solomon, king of Israel, had made for the temple of Jehovah. He carried all Jerusalem into exile, all the officers and fighting men and all the skilled workers and artisans, a total of 10,000. Only the poorest people of the land were left. Notice the ark is not mentioned specifically there. And there's no particular reason why it would have been mentioned. He just said he took all the stuff. You know, it doesn't go through great lists of inventories of things necessarily there. Nebuchadnezzar took Jehoiachin captive to Babylon. He also took from, we are rapidly approaching the end of the kingdom of Israel and Judah here. Took him to Babylon. He also took from Jerusalem to Babylon the king's mother, his wives, his officials, and the prominent people of the land. It's kind of an expansion of what we already said. King of Babylon also deported to Babylon the entire force of 7,000 fighting men, strong and fit for war, and 1,000 skilled workers and artisans. He made Mattaniah, Jehoiachin's uncle, king in his place, and changed his name to Zedekiah, which is the name you see up there at the very bottom of the kings of Judah. That's the last king. Zedekiah is the brother, of course, to Jehoahaz, one of the earlier kings. Was 21 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 11 years. His mother's name was Hamutal, the earlier Hamutal we've heard of. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, just as Jehoiakim had done. It was because of the Lord's anger that all this happened to Jerusalem and Judah, and the end, he thrust them from his presence. Now Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon. That's stupid. He kind of rules the world, and you're going to try to beat him. So in the 9th year of Zedekiah's reign, on the 10th day of the 10th month, too bad it wasn't the 10th year of his reign on the 10th day of the 10th month. That could have had all kinds of cosmological meaning, I guess. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, marched against Jerusalem with his whole army, which is probably some millions of men, maybe. He encamped outside the city and built siege works all around it. The city was kept under siege until the 11th year of King Zedekiah, which was approximately 2 years. By the 9th day of the 4th month, the famine in the city, this is the 4th month of the 2nd year. The famine in the city had become so severe that there was no food for the people to eat. Then the city wall was broken through, and the whole Israeli army fled at night through the gate between the two walls near the king's garden, though the Babylonians were surrounding the city. So they found some way to get through the Babylonians, I guess. Even though I misread it, it was technically still true. they fled toward the Arabah. But the Babylonian army pursued the king and overtook him in the plains of Jericho. All his soldiers were separated from him and scattered, and he was captured. He was taken to the king of Babylon, where sentence was pronounced on him. They killed the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes. Then they put out his eyes, bound him with bronze shackles, and took him to Babylon. So that was not uncommon for them to do that. They would hold a king or a high-ranking person captive and make them witness the execution of their children. Yes?
Nebuchadnezzar has come. There were three carryings off.
Yeah.
One was by the Assyrians.
Yes, which was primarily the northern kingdom, I think. Yeah.
And then after Nebuchadnezzar defeated the Assyrians,
yeah.
then any action was on his part.
And then he does it twice.
His kingdom was actually twice as big as the Assyrians.
Yeah, you need to remember, the Assyrians were first the big empire. If you remember your world history from either high school or college, I don't know if we got good world history. I remember taking a whole big, thick book of actually two big, thick books of world history in college. It was fascinating. But the Assyrian Empire was first, followed by the Babylonian Empire, which absorbed the Assyrian Empire. And then what was the third big empire that came in right after that? The Persian Empire comes next, and then the Greek Empire comes after that. In fact, did you want to say something else about it?
No, I was thinking about I don't remember who it was, who the king was, but I remember that Jeremiah he had written some stuff for the king to read, and Baruch, his scribe, took the writing to the king, and while he was reading it to the king was cutting it, slicing it off, and throwing it into the fire.
There you go. I'm not doing this. You know.
So Jeremiah had to write it all over again.
Do it again. Let's see. I forgot where I was. We're talking about the Assyrians and the Babylonians. And what I was going to say was that, and I may want to look at these later on, the prophets. Oh, and I told you something wrong, probably for several weeks in a row. There are more than 12 prophets. There are more than 12 prophet books. There are 12 minor prophet books. There are either 16 or 17 total prophet books, depending on whether or not you count Lamentations as a prophecy book. But there are 12 minor prophets, and then another 4 or 5 major prophets. You've got Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel, which are considered the major prophets, although one of them, toward the end, I'm trying to remember which one it is. I think it's the next to the last prophet in the minor prophets. It's actually quite a long book. I can't remember which one it is now. But, so I was telling you wrong. I think over the last several weeks I've been saying there were 12 prophets. They're actually either 16 or 12 books of prophecy. They're either 16 or 17, depending on how you divide that up. And many, many times, these prophets are not even prophesying concerning Israel or Judah. They're prophesying concerning all these nations around them and everything. I mean, a number of them are just about Nineveh. That was the capital of Assyria, wasn't it? Yeah. A number of them are just on Nineveh. You remember, Jonah's only about Nineveh. And a couple of the others are just, like another one is about Nineveh. I think it's Nahum or... Yeah, Nahum, I believe, is just about Nineveh. And then many of these others, even Jeremiah, prophesies about all these nations and what's going to happen to them and everything. So these are not limited prophecies to just the Hebrews. They include the whole region and what's going to happen to them. I'm going to go, let's see, where are we time-wise here? Well, we're basically at the end, so maybe I'll stop right there. So he carries off the king, executes his sons in front of his eyes, blinds him, and takes him off captive. Ended what's the date? The 20th? Yeah, 3/20. So he carries them off. And this whole process is just, snowballing out of control. And we will very likely finish up this next week, and we'll begin a new study shortly after that. Bill, I was trying to make it fall out so that it ended right at the end of April, but I may end up having to at least introduce a new study to get me to the end of April. A blessing. May the Lord give you wisdom to judge rightly truth wherever you find it, and may you act righteously on that truth when you do find it. Through Christ our Lord. Amen.